Hi class, welcome to our first lecture in Political Science 7, Contemporary World Affairs, or as it's commonly known, international relations. So you'll hear me use the term international relations a lot. How this is going to go this semester is I'm going to break up our lecture videos into different parts. You have access to the full lecture slides on Canvas, but so they're a little bit more easy to digest. I'm gonna break them up into 2, maybe 3 parts. I might exclude some slides, some transitionary slides that maybe aren't completely pertinent to the course. So that being said, I'm gonna share my screen with you and we'll get going. Okay, so this first lecture, we're gonna kind of get into the history of the nation state being the state system that we currently have in our global system, okay? But before we do that, let's kind of define some terms and kind of get into what we're gonna be studying this semester. So international relations, as I said, that's essentially what this course is the study of interactions of state and non-state actors in international politics. So that's what we're going to be looking at, how different states or countries, we're going to use the word state and country interchangeably in this course, interact with each other and what results from these interactions. So we're going to take a look at historical interactions between states, different theories on how states should or do interact with each other, etc. So some key terms, and again, we got to define these terms before we kind of get into the more complex and interesting stuff. So bear with me here. As I said before, state, we're going to use interchangeably with country, simply meaning a sovereign territory controlled by a government. Okay, so no outside influence telling you what you can and cannot do, or no internal forces dictating policy. That's a sovereign territory. That's what a state is. So like the United States of America is a state, Britain, the Philippines, Japan, China, whatever it is, those are states, okay? And the international system I keep talking about, just the relationships, interactions among states. That's what the international system is. And that's, again, what we are studying this semester. Now, if we had to boil it down, we might say that the main issue we are trying to solve this semester and what international relations as a study is trying to solve is a collective action problem. We are trying to solve collective action problems. And that is basically, how do we get different countries or states to give up or forgo their individual interests in the interest of the collective, in favor of the collective? So how do we give states to not be selfish and do what's right for the entire global community? And a perfect example of this would be global warming caused by carbon dioxide emissions, right? We know that carbon dioxide emissions are a problem. So why is this a collective action problem? Because to basically go green, to switch away from carbon dioxide emissions, it's going to hurt your state, right? There's going to be economic problems, okay? You're gonna have to switch up your main industry. You're gonna have to change the way you make cars, et cetera. So you're gonna incur some damage. Now, the collective action problem comes in because while it would benefit the entire globe, every country in this world would benefit if everyone reduced carbon dioxide emissions because it would help save the planet, right? It would ensure that that human beings can survive on this planet for a longer period of time. But because there are costs incurred to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, many states do not want to do so, okay? So the question we're trying to solve is how can we get countries to forego their own interest, which is not switching to a greener plan because they take an economic hit, to change their mind and say, okay, we'll take this economic hit in the interest of everybody because this affects everybody. And you'll see that countries don't want to do it, but in some instances, they might do it if everyone else does it. So it's kind of like, who's going to blink first? That is a collective action problem. Now, there are 3 potential solutions we're going to talk about today to solve the collective action problem. Again, that is to get every country to act in the best interest of the entire global system. Dominance, reciprocity, and identity. Let's start with dominance. This is the dominant solution to a collective action problem. Dominance is essentially a hierarchy of power in which the more powerful control the less powerful, okay? The strong do what they will, the weak do what they must, all right? So essentially, this solves the collective action problem, I should say, excuse me, by the strong states forcing weaker states to comply, forcing them to do what's best for the interest of the entire globe, okay? And this can be a good thing. This can work in some scenarios. It can forcefully solve a collective action problem, and this can indeed benefit the entire world. Let's say tomorrow the United States decided to completely curb its carbon dioxide emissions, and it said, okay, to the rest of the world, you have 1 year to comply with these standards or we're going to go to war with you. Now, this is, of course, a ridiculous situation, but the rest of the world would have to make a decision. Do you want to go to war with the most powerful nation of all time? Or do we want to curb our global emissions? That could work, right, on paper. However, there are negative sides to this. For one, it's completely oppressive, right? You can't really, you shouldn't really, I should say. It sets a bad precedent to have powerful nations dictate the policy of other sovereign nations. It also creates resentment, which could create a coalition against you. You know, other countries might team up against the United States and say, no, we're going to all team up and go to war against you if you force us to do this. And that'd be a challenge of power, create conflict, and maybe even war. So there are good and bad to every theory. The next possible solution for collective action problems, reciprocity. And that is rewarding those who contribute to solving collective action problems and punishing those who do not. So this can be done by a coalition. Let's say, again, let's use the United States. And let's keep using our example of carbon dioxide. Let's say we got a bunch of people to sign a document saying, please reduce your carbon emissions, like the Paris Accord, essentially, which ironically the US left and then came back to, but it's neither here nor there. We could say, okay, we're going to give you status, or we're going to give you trade benefits if you join our goal of reducing carbon emissions. That is one possible solution to the collective action problem. The good, this can lead to cooperation. We can work with other states to achieve this goal and reward financially or with status those who comply, and maybe make those who do not comply international pariahs, refuse to do business with them, a trade, etc. Okay. So what are the bad aspects of reciprocity? States might overpunish. So if you refuse to join the coalition, maybe that you do a trade embargo, or maybe you refuse to do business with a country, that could really harm that country and the people in that country. It could destroy their economy, could destroy their job market and lead to hunger, death, starvation, etc. And it can also lead to domination. Once you get a taste of this coalition could get too powerful and then keep going until it becomes too powerful. And of course, the biggest problem with reciprocity is it's very difficult to organize. There are about 200 countries in the world, and they all have their own ideas, cultures, traditions, histories. It's hard to get a bunch of different states with a bunch of different individuals to agree to anything. As you'll see throughout this semester, international cooperation can be extremely difficult. The last possible solution for collective action problems is identity. And that is the slow game, the long game, or the long con, we can call it. And that is, instead of dictating or mandating that other states change their actions and behaviors, you're slowly trying to change their preferences and beliefs to prefer the common good, to make them want to contribute to the collective, okay? So make them more susceptible to negotiation. And how do you do this? Through organization again, through cooperation. There are theories like liberalism that say the more you trade, the more you're connected financially and culturally, the more your ideals and beliefs will be similar. So if you can kind of infiltrate that way, you won't have to force them to do anything because they'll want to do it. They'll want to work towards the collective good because your thoughts, belief systems are similar. What good aspects can this bring? It can bring the world together. It can create common viewpoints, minimize not just problems like collective action problems like carbon dioxide emissions, but also war, right? The more similar countries are, we'll see throughout the semester, at least theoretically, the less likely they are to go to war. The bad, this theory is pretty unrealistic. It's very, very hard to change people's mind. And that's not even on an international level. That's even on a personal level. Go try to convince someone who disagrees with you personally about politics to agree with you. Okay, let's go back to 2016, the election, whether you voted for Clinton or Trump. How hard would it have been to convince someone who voted for Trump to vote for Clinton and vice versa, right? And you run into that same problem internationally. It is extraordinarily difficult to change people's minds. So the identity solution to a collective action problem perhaps isn't as realistic or achievable as we might hope. Okay, so what we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to talk about the history of the nation state. So we currently live in a nation state system. We have sovereign countries that have definitive borders who interact with each other. But it wasn't always that way. There's a gradual progression that led to that nation state system. Now, if you've taken my Poli-Sci 2 class, which is essentially comparative politics, we've gone over this before, but it's definitely worth reviewing. So let's go over that now. Now, I already kind of defined the nation state, but just to drill it in, a nation state is a sovereign state whose citizens or subjects are relatively homogeneous in factors such as language or common descent. And again, this is relatively new phenomenon. It hasn't always been this way in history. So we're going to go back all the way to the first kind of manifestation of any sort of state system, not the first political organization. Human beings have organized themselves politically forever, right? Whether it be tribes or feudal clans, whatever it is, human beings seem to want to group together. We're talking about essentially creating our modern day state system. And I think the best place to start there is in Europe, and more specifically in Greece, about 500 to 100 BCE. And Greek city-states were not nation states like we had today, but a collection of kind of small city-states. And these states had similar cultures, similar religions, similar languages, but they were very much independent. They would trade with each other. They would sometimes go to war with each other. So it's almost like a little microcosm we can examine now that can maybe tell us more about our current nation state system. So here's an idea if you're looking at where some of these city states were. There were many more than this. There was almost 200 of them, but here are some of the more well-known ones in Greece. Now, of course, they do not exist today. Of course, Greece, the country, exists today, but these nation states were eventually absorbed into neighboring empires, ultimately the Roman Empire, who would have a long dynasty. Okay, we talked about this. Let's keep going. So after the dissolution of the Greek city-states in Europe and through larger Europe, we're going to now move on to the medieval era, 5th to 15th century. So after Rome falls, Europe was really split into two empires. You have the medieval Catholic Empire in the west. You have the Byzantine Empire in the east, centered around its capital, Constantinople, which is now modern-day Istanbul, Turkey. Here's a very crude map that shows you that. So this is the area we're talking about in Europe. And if we had to define the medieval era, we would define it just the way it sounds, the Dark Ages, right? There was a lot of conflict, no international relations really, not countries really negotiating with each other. The territories weren't really defined. There was disorder, violence, conflict, sickness. It was a very hard time to be alive, to be honest, I'm sure. Now, towards the end of this medieval era, you get a change. The Catholic Church was very powerful during this time. Kings begin to defy the church, become more independent. They subordinate their lessers, their barons, knights, etc. And they start to create their own nation states. They start to create their own sovereign nations, importantly with definitive borders. Where the Dark Ages were defined with non-definitive borders, they start to solidify, okay, my land starts here and yours stops there. All right. And of course, anytime you're drawing borders, there's going to be conflict because every king's going to want more land than the other king, and they're going to be going back and forth. So it leads to war, it leads to rivalry. Now, when we're talking about merging from the medieval system to our modern system, to our modern nation state system, we have to talk about two events. and that is the 30 Years' War and the Peace of Westphalia. So what happens with the 30 Years' War is it starts out as a religious war, but it really turns into a conflict between European powers fighting for territory. And it's really Europeans' first of quite a few continental war between sovereign states. Okay, so essentially, to recap, the kings gain more power from the church. They start to create definitive borders. And anytime you create borders, there's going to be conflict. So we enter into the 30-Year Wars in 1618. I'm sure you can determine why it's called the 30 Years' War. So the 30-Year War ends in 1648 with a revolutionary treaty, we'll call it, called the Peace of Westphalia. Essentially, the major powers of Europe meet and decide to establish definitive borders and respect each other's sovereignty. Okay, this is huge. So before, where they're fighting over borders and not recognizing each other's authority, now they decide to meet, they decide to end conflict and say, okay, our land starts here, your land starts there, and we're going to respect that sovereignty, respect that border. And this step is huge to establishing the system that we still have today. It's a system of non-intervention in domestic affairs of other nations. What happens in France is no business of Europe, or I'm sorry, of England's, right? What happens in, one country is no business of the other country. And again, this world order still exists today. Is that to say that sovereignty is sometimes not violated? Of course not. But it is seen as a negative and often counteracted in today's world, okay? It also establishes a multipolar Europe. Again, many great powers in Europe. And we're going to end this lecture here, but in part B of lecture 1, we're going to talk about how this balance of power has been challenged many times throughout history, Napoleon, Hitler, etc. So this concludes part A of lecture 1. Please tune into part B, and I will speak to you guys soon.